We're recording.
Yeah, guy. Yeah, guy. Welcome, everybody. Spit. It's the Spit Podcast. It is, what day is it? It's a Tuesday, and it is August 4th. And Spit is all things surf. I've got my LaCroix. What are you drinking?
I've got my Topo
Yeah.
Chico with a spritz of lime. Which flavor LaCroix do you got?
Well, I've got lemon, but I'm a big fan of the pamplemousse grapefruit.
Nice. Somebody came over a while back and they left a case of the LaCroix natural flavor. No additional spritz of anything, and it was delightful. I just finished it last night, actually.
Well, I feel like you've one upped me. The Topo Chico with the lime squeeze, just partly because it's in a bottle, makes me feel like once again you've outclassed me.
I barely have to try, but ain't that the truth about drinking stuff out of a bottle instead of a can? The bottle, it's maybe 3 times better than a can, no matter what it is.
Yeah. And holy shit, I just realized I've got vertical surfboard stands. I could literally put my boards up behind me in my stands and just be like taking care of a couple of the guys that make me boards.
And honestly, that's all the people care about. The most consistent feedback we've gotten over the years is that they want to see more of your quiver.
Well, maybe you have an email you can read while I set up my quiver behind me, a couple boards behind me.
I'll just pause it and then we'll come back when you got them set up.
All right. Okay.
That is perfect. I mean, I recognize the Clyde Beatty Jr. because you picked that up when we were at Shack last, but what do you got on your other side?
Yeah, that other one is a deep six, obviously a single fin that Bob Mitzvin made for me. Super sexy. There, gives it a little bit more of a view. So that thing's I got some great waves this winter on that board.
How big is that?
It's 6'6". Actually, both these boards are 6'6". Clyde Beatty is 6'6". Clyde Beatty's got probably twice as much foam as the Mitzvin. The thing's wide. But I have not ridden this one. Yeah, this one.
Waves have been too small.
I haven't surfed in 3 weeks.
That's insane.
I have not entered the ocean in 3 weeks.
Is that a record?
Mostly because, yeah. Well, I don't know. Did I tell you I was building a retaining wall on my hill?
Yeah.
So anyway, a couple things have happened. I got diverticulitis. That sent me to the hospital.
Big reveal, because that interrupted one of our podcasts scheduling, but we didn't discuss it with listeners. But yeah, that's a big deal.
Yeah, diverticulitis. So as soon as I got over that, well, there was no waves. It was small, right? It's basically been small since the July 4th weekend. That was the last south swell we had. And I got this like crazy idea to build a retaining wall in my backyard. And because it's been cold water and literally like not just small, but like tiny, and cold. Like I surf when it's small. Like I'll surf when it's 2 feet, 2 to 3. I'll surf. I got boards to surf that. I got 11-foot gliders. I got all sorts of stuff. But it's been gutless and tiny and borderline flat, frankly. And many mornings it feels like it's flat. Like you can't even surf if you wanted to. And so that combined with my commitment to build this wall on my hill has kept me out of the water. I've just been excited about building this wall. So that's what I've been doing. And it's been flat. Like if there's waves, I'd surf.
I know. No, there's like actually no swell. It's not just that it's small swell. There's no swell. Do you enjoy it at all? Do you enjoy not having the albatross on your shoulder every day of what the waves are doing?
Well, no, I love to surf. And as you know, I do the surf report down here in the morning, every morning on the radio. And so I'm pretty keyed into it, like I know what it's doing. If there was waves, I'd surf, but couple the 2 feet at 5 seconds, which is the most gutless wind swell ever, combined with a 59-degree water, and I've got quite a few other things that would be better for me to do with my time, and it equals 3 weeks of not surfing.
Yeah.
And I want to surf. I'm ready to get wet. But when was the last time you surfed really any kind of good wave?
Yeah, it was right after 4th of July.
Yeah, that was the last time. Basically, everyone in Southern California has been under this gauntlet of crap, and I bet it's really good for places like Waco, because it's kind of hard to get on a plane and go somewhere. I think you could probably go to Cabo, but I know you can't go to Salina Cruz. And, there's other places I don't think they really want you showing up. Yeah. So Waco's probably killing it during the Southern California flat spell. It has been a flat spell for 3 weeks, let's be honest.
Oh, completely. Yeah, that is curious. I hadn't even thought about how that would affect wave pool business. I have a feeling Waco's probably booked out no matter what. But you got to imagine when the Palm Springs pools come online, they will absolutely be affected by flat swells.
Well, I ran into Michael Grell, and I did a podcast with Michael Grell on the Boardroom podcast, and he is one of the developers of the Oceanside wave pool, which is going to be off the 76 freeway. And he's using the same technology, the Tom Lochtefeld wave lock technology that they're using out at the pool you just mentioned, one in Palm Springs, the DSRT. I think that's the one. And he went out there and rode the wave, and he's a good surfer. And he had like a little abrasion here, and he had a little abrasion here, and he had a big smile on his face. He's like, dude, that wave is insane. Super fun. I guess the drop's pretty difficult.
Yeah.
You surfed it, didn't you? That's right. You surfed it.
I did surf
right?
it. I did. Yeah. It's the most fun of any of the pools that I've surfed. And I think largely because I had the experience of the other pools. So by the time I got to this one, it was like all of those nerves were gone and you could just kind of have a blast. The other thing was we had the pool for the entire day. So there was no limitation to the time, and you could really get things dialed. In regard to the drop being difficult, there's kind of infinite number of settings for the pool. So I'm not sure which wave he was actually surfing. There was only one setting that we didn't surf, which was, they call it the slab. And it actually pushes kind of against the wall. And you really have to, I don't even know, knife in, airdrop, and then immediately get going. And so Shane Magnuson and Hunter Jones, which is a Southern California pro surfer, they were the only guys surfing that setting. And they did it right at the end of the day. I was already kind of burned out, and I had surfed the other barreling setting for the previous hour or so and kind of got my fill. And then they set that, and I was like, you know what, I'll just let them have it, because it looks like if you're going to get hurt, you're going to get hurt at the end of the day on the biggest setting. And I was already stoked. So maybe that's the one that he was doing that he's talking about, because it did look super hard to make.
Yeah, and like I said, the biggest characteristic of my run-in with him was the smile on his face.
Yeah.
Like he was stoked. He was obviously fulfilled, and that's a feeling that I haven't had in quite a while.
Dude, the funny thing is, I mean, it honestly is, it's like a drug. You get in that pool, you can't get enough. You have to you just want another hit. You get a wave, you have the time of your life, and you just want more. Like having the time of your life isn't enough. You need another one. And the other thing that's unique to, I don't know, maybe it's not unique to surfing, but it definitely exists in surfing, is that you never fully live up to your potential. Rarely do you ever surf a wave as well as you think that you can. And so as soon as you kick out of a wave in that pool, you think of what you could have done better, what how you're going to hit the section the next time. So you scramble back out there, wait your turn, licking your chops, you get another one, and then you have that exact same feeling again. And you're constantly chasing the dragon, so to speak. And I could see it being a huge, benefit for those who are selling the pool technology or the investors in the pool itself. Because if you can get people salivating like that for your commodity, I mean, that's worth, it's invaluable.
I've never not had that salivation that you speak of when I've been, and I'm talking about like Typhoon Lagoon, like the crappiest one out there in Orlando at Disney World.
Yeah.
And I was running back to make sure I got in, as soon as I could into the queue so that somebody wouldn't snivel in front of me. So yeah, I think that's something that we all experience. I don't think you're alone in that.
No, it's really, and I mean, it exists in the ocean too, obviously, but the scarcity of the wave pool, I think, maybe intensifies it. So I've got feedback. Remember last week you were asking me about COVID and how immunity relates to it? Like, how come the news isn't really talking about getting in the sunlight, getting exercise, and the role of immunity? Somebody emailed in regard to that, and he said, longtime listener, first time caller, I wanted to add to your discussion about the impact of COVID on the wider population. Before I bang on about this, I wanted to mention that I am bearing in mind that my own account is subjective, anecdotal, and not representative of the wider experience for the majority. But I came down with the lurgy in early March with pretty classic symptoms, dry cough, fever for about a week, which later developed into difficulty breathing. I couldn't walk around the house without getting out of breath, and my lungs ached to the point where I couldn't sleep. Week 3, the cough eased and the lung ache dissipated. What followed was a week of sifting through the eye of the needle until the fever broke and finally felt like I was recovering. And yet I had another 4 to 6 weeks of coughing up phlegm from somewhere in my lungs with short but intense bouts with my chest feeling like it was on fire inside. Again, those symptoms eventually subsided, but even now, end of July, when I get really tired after a surf or a hike, the chest pains creep in for a while. I'm 33, 5'11", 165 pounds, work on my feet, surf 3 times a week, and I hike and run when I can, and I do yoga on a regular basis and have no pre-existing conditions. Whenever my wife and I get sick, she is normally worse off, and I feel very little. This time, she had a cough, sore throat for a day or two, and knocked the thing out. I get that the majority of people will have a, quote, bad flu and recover in 4 to 7 days. But does that mean people like me just have to roll the dice because the majority don't give a shit and want business as usual? Or am I a delicate snowflake melting on the proverbial hot California sand? Love the show. It's like 2 mates having a chin wag in the car park after a sesh. Kook you is inspired. Keep up the good work.
A chin wag.
I have no idea, but he's basically
That's an
saying
Aussie.
he's super healthy and he got it terribly, despite his high immunity.
And you mentioned a friend of yours that you knew that was a runner that had done the same thing, that was basically in shape and got horribly ill. Well, look, wear a mask, and I wear a mask. In fact, I went to a party the other day. A friend of mine and his girlfriend got engaged, and there was a party, and it was a birthday thing, and blah, blah, blah. And it's a younger crowd, like they're probably 29. And my wife and I went to this party, and I'm like, should I wear a mask? Like, no, I'm gonna wear a mask. I hope everyone else is wearing a mask. So I put on my mask, go to this party, and of course, my wife and I are the only 2 people with masks on. We're like the classic, 50 plus year old with masks, and there's a bunch of like 20 somethings running around without masks. Like, there's no such thing as COVID, and it was awkward being, socially having a mask on, and it's hard enough without a mask to engage with people at a party, stand around like and try to create chit chat and hopefully get interested in somebody and talk. Yeah. But with a mask on, it's friggin' impossible.
Yeah. Well, you probably did the right thing. All those super spreaders are the reason that we're seeing spikes right now.
Holy shit. Super spreaders. I need a t-shirt.
All right. Do you want some Kook U feedback?
Yeah, Kook U. Kook University, where David and Scott give you some basic rules to go by if you're a beginner.
Some principles.
Principles now, are they?
Well, so this listener, he started out, I won't read the whole thing, but he started out by saying, you know, he appreciated that email about you shouldn't burn people because it only ruins your own day, basically. And he said, yeah, but occasionally it's necessary. And he goes on to explain this situation. He said, so the situation plays out in Nias on a good swell. There was a moderate crowd with about 20 people, a mix of locals, Australians, Americans, Europeans. We as a group of 3 Canary Island surfers, though normally being in the upper part of the surf level at most spots, here I was definitely lower tier. People were taking off deeper, getting shacked, being blown out, doing maneuvers on impossible sections, and just ripping. Everyone was respecting their turns, waiting in line. It was textbook proper etiquette until another nation hit the water. He doesn't ever explain which nation hit the water, but
it was Brazilians. It was Brazilians. I checked with them.
You did?
It was Brazilians. Oh yeah.
Okay.
It was Brazilians.
So he goes on to say, close to 10 highly motivated surfers. They were loud and surfed as if they were alone, paddling straight past everyone to the peak and trying to get shots from their photographer that they had brought, waiting in line for what I felt like was an hour, but was probably only about 15 minutes. It was my turn to get the next wave, and I got back paddled. The guy paddled around me, took off, so I pulled back. But I felt like I was a kid being intimidated by the school bully. The glee and euphoria that I had previously been feeling throughout this session now turned to angst. A short time later, while I patiently waited my turn, the same exact surfer back paddled me again. I knew that I'd lose all respect if I backed down. So despite him being deeper than me, I took off on the wave and faded him. He didn't back down either. Our elbows hit as I dropped in. If you surf Nias, you know how useful it is to concentrate on your takeoff. Ultimately, he had to straighten out. After that, I was not hassled again, nor back paddled. It's sad, but to be respected, sometimes you have to step up and do stuff outside of what you would normally do. The photographer they had brought got the shot, and it looks like I'm the one who's at fault, but everyone in the water was okay with what I did, and even the guy that I faded. He still back paddled other people, but my session was saved and the weight on my shoulders was gone. Cheers, Oliver. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, that's a good email, and I corresponded back with him, and we chatted a little bit on Instagram. But my thoughts are, I guess most of my thoughts are about the concept of a pack of Brazilians, because it's happened to me. You and I have talked about it. I mean, we've all been on boat trips in the Mentawais where everything seems to be going relatively smooth, right? There's a couple boatloads of these guys, there's boatloads of those guys, there's boatloads of Australians, and everyone's kind of got it going on as far as the hierarchy or how the flow of catching waves is moving. And I don't know if you've experienced this, but I have experienced this. A boat of Brazilians pulls up in their little dinghy. 8 of them flop out. 5 minutes later, another 8 flop out, and they begin to just charge straight up to the takeoff point. And the whole time they're barking in their Portuguese, which is like this super snappy kind of aggressive. I mean, I don't know anything about Portuguese, but it seems like when the Brazilians use the language, they're basically saying "fuck you" over and over and over again. That's all I ever hear anyway. It's like, I mean, they could be saying, "Honey, I love you. Let me give you $1 million," but it sounds like "fuck you, motherfucker." Just the way they spit out their language aggressively drives me crazy. And they paddle up to the top of the point, and you know, they just kind of, they basically go crazy until somebody does something. And so, you know, we're going to have to do something. And so we do.
And what do we do?
You and I've told you this story before. I know I've told you this. Like when I got back from a trip like 7 or 8 years ago. So I just paddle straight up to the top and I just get loud. I get louder than them. And I'm like, hey, what are we doing? What's the plan? Like, tell me what to do. Do you want me to sit up here and wait my turn? When's my turn? Do you have a number that you can give me? Do you have something on a stick that I can hold? like I just go overboard because at some point somebody needs to like, we can't just sit there with our heads in our laps and watch these guys do fucking circles around us. So I'll just go, hey, what, I'm going, I guess it's my turn. I don't know. You're paddling, but you're back paddling me. Like it just gets into chaos. And then eventually it's like, and I'm like, well, then tell me what to do if you're in charge, like, where's my number? When do I get to go? When's my turn? And I'll take my turn when you tell me. And then they're like, oh, there's no turns. Okay, if there's no turns, then I'm going on every wave. And it turns into a scene and it gets ugly, but somebody has to be the ugly American or the ugly Australian to set it straight, or they will just take advantage of you. And it's what's lame about it is that they all 16 of them paddle out at once. They don't eke out 5 at a time and wait an hour between the next load from your boat to get dropped off. They all just pop out 16 at a time and just start barking at each other.
So in that scenario where you actually did that, what happened?
They acquiesced. They had to. I'm like, all I'm asking for is tell me how to do it. If you guys have got some way to do this, tell me how to do it. But I was as loud as I am now or louder. Like, I'm like, here I am. Show me what to do. I'm not going to sit here with my head. I didn't fly all the way over here to watch you fucking do circles around me. Fuck that.
But they started letting waves go through?
Well, I start just going.
Okay.
And then it's like, hey man, it's my turn. I'm like, how come? Explain to me why. Why isn't it my turn? Because I don't see any order out here. There was order out here before you showed up.
Right.
And so I go, and then, of course, everyone's like, fuck, thank God somebody's speaking up,
Yeah. Okay, well, let me ask you this. I understand that experience that you had, and those guys.
I'm a little pissed off right now, David.
All right, well, here, keep bringing the heat. I understand the experience that you had on that boat was with Brazilians, but how is it not racist to now, whenever a scenario like this comes up through email, for you to then say they were Brazilians, weren't they? I'm not saying you're wrong.
I'm not saying it might be racist, I don't know if being a Brazilian, that's not a race. Like they're Hispanic or I don't know what, I don't think maybe they're Latino or I don't know what the race is, but being Brazilian is it's a nationality.
Well, they're not Hispanic.
Well, my point is that it's not racist. It's a nation thing. It's a nation state thing. Right?
I don't know. I don't know. No, I'm not. I'm saying, how is it different? Classifying like this whole nation state acts a certain way, but I'm not even saying you're wrong. Look, I think
I'm not saying I'm right either, by the way. I'm not saying that's the way to do it. I'm just saying that's what happened. Look, I'm not saying like it's like, it's not necessarily the way that I want to behave. It's not why I flew 24 hours to Indonesia to get into a situation with somebody. Nobody wants that.
But I think that you're right, though, in that there's cultural norms for sure in and out of surfing, and people are raised a certain way in their communities, and you can track trends, and it's very effective to do. Why is it, though, that Brazilians behave that way? Why is it that this story comes up?
I know.
I mean,
I have no idea.
Have you spent time in Brazil?
No.
Surfing? No.
Crowded
beaches?
I mean, look, we're going to get emails from people, and I can tell you what they're going to say. Some of them are going to say this. Brazilians are great when they're by yourself. Like when you're one-on-one with them, or when you get a pack of them out at a surf spot, they tend to kind of like run amok.
Yeah, I mean, the stereotype is true, by the way.
When I'm with you,
I'm calling you out.
When I'm with my friends or whoever I'm surfing with, I very rarely fucking talk to you. I'm paddling, I'm doing my head's down, I'm on a mission, I'm doing my own thing, and I might say, hey, we might like look at each other in the eye like halfway through the session one time and say, hey, when are you going in? Or whatever, but it's not like this. Fuck you.
Yeah. No, the stereotype is true in surfing for some reason, because I mean, this email that we get this email regularly. And all you got to do is go surf lowers to kind of see it in action any given day of the week. But there is a reason. I'm curious what the reason for it is. Like I could imagine in Rio, obviously, it is hyper condensed populace feeding down into a few small beaches. So it would make sense that there'd be a lot of aggression in the lineup there. But I don't know how the rest of Brazil is. Like, I don't know what other factors are at play, but definitely there's it's kind of the opposite of what I think of with Japanese surf culture as being kind of gentlemanly and maybe even foregoing set waves to let the elder in the group get a wave and that sort of thing. So it's curious, but it's a thing.
It is a very interesting thing, actually, from sort of a sociological standpoint. If you could pull yourself out from 30,000 feet and look at the different nation states and the way that they behave as groups on trips in different areas and why it is that they behave that way.
Yeah.
And I think the Japanese example is a great contrast to the Brazilian. I think you've basically got the two, most different sort of, behavior types.
Yeah.
But it's a weird, in a weird way, it's like this weird meritocracy for Brazilian surfers. It's almost like the loudest, brashest gets the wave, and they don't even have to be the best surfer.
Right.
And so it's like this meritocracy of machismo, like,
it's
loud, big, strong.
The meritocracy isn't at play in that one scenario where it is everywhere else in the surfing world.
Like they earn their merit not through their ability in the ocean, but through their sort of social standing amongst their peers.
You know what? I wonder if that the conversation about once you start burning people, you diminish your own fun in the session. I wonder if that applies in that Brazilian mindset. Like, is it universal? And does that psychological effect, is it dampened by your own cultural upbringing? Is the Japanese crowd of guys who are giving away waves having more kind of enlightened fun than the Brazilian group who's burning a bunch of people?
Yeah.
Or they're having less fun because they're getting less waves.
I don't know. I think you and I know that if, altercations equal not a good time.
Yeah, I tend to feel that way. But again, if your culture is kind of has a tolerance built up against that, they're impervious to it. So it doesn't affect their mental state.
Yeah.
Well,
so are they less civilized?
I don't know.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Just go there.
No, because again, you'd have to define civilized. They're less civilized by our culture's norms.
If civilized is like, English sort of cucumber sandwiches, lawn bowling, like sort of like this. What's the most civilized society and culture that you know of?
Japanese. I mean, I still think Japanese, like they're the most advanced technologically. So, and
let's use that. I would agree. They're pretty civilized. They're civil, like they're almost overly civil in some ways.
Totally.
And since we agreed that the Brazilians are at the other end of the spectrum, then we're basically saying that the Brazilians are less civilized.
I know. I would agree with that, but again, I do it with the caveat of we're doing it through our own cultural understanding of the term civilized, because I have a feeling Brazilian, whatever their word would be for it, just inherently has a different definition. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Maybe they don't have a word.
Probably not. Well, moving on.
Okay. Yeah. We went down a rabbit hole.
We certainly did. I wanted to draw your attention. Last week, I held up that new issue of the Surfer's Journal with Mikey February on the cover.
Yeah.
I got into that this week. There's a fantastic piece that I'd like to draw everybody's attention to about Sterling Spencer. Gulf Coast of Florida, from Pensacola Beach. He's a kind of, I don't know, B-tier pro surfer from, let's say, the mid-2000s who transitioned out of, I don't know, like a non-competitive pro surfer, free surf thing into doing surf satire was really his bread and butter when he was at the peak of his career. And so this article covers all of that. Um, Interestingly, he pissed off a lot of the surf industry and professional surfers with that brand of comedy. So he goes into that in detail and talks about Kelly Slater, trying to track him down, Jeremy Flores threatening him for a year and barely not crossing paths with Jeremy, and then finally crossing paths with him at the surfers pole on the North Shore, and then Jeremy choking him out from behind. And Sterling wasn't even aware that Jeremy was there. Like, Sterling's having a drink at the bar, and all of a sudden he knows he's being choked, and he gets choked unconscious and wakes up looking up at Jeremy. So then kind of him backing off of that brand of comedy that he was pushing and basically going into depression, which he had struggled with off and on, ultimately stopped surfing for months on end, didn't leave the house, loses his sponsorship. And he was making these surf films periodically. I'd say every year and a half or so, he dropped a full feature film, and they were really good. And that was kind of his little bit of salvation that he would have through his depression. But ultimately finds love with his current wife. They have a son together, and he is, feels like he's found salvation through those loving relationships. But it's just a really well done piece. I've known Sterling certainly from afar and peripherally on Instagram. I didn't know all of this information, and now I actually want to get to know him more. I'll actually reach out to do a podcast with him. I was going to do one with him a couple of years ago when I was in Florida, but it didn't work out. But I'm more inclined now than ever to kind of unpack a lot of this stuff because it's fascinating,
Yeah, I'd like to read the article. My only experience with him wasn't a positive one.
Tell me.
I just, it was just in the water. It wasn't anything. He didn't really do anything bad. He just was.
He got too many waves and then you faded him.
Yeah, exactly. No, he was a little bit aloof. A little bit aloof, I guess I would say.
What are you not saying?
That I just thought he was a dick.
Because he didn't acknowledge who you were?
No,
You're saying aloof as if like he's a pro surfer and he didn't give you. Or
I wasn't even. No, it wasn't that at all. No, it was more like he was just. It had nothing to do with me. I didn't even really surf where he was surfing. I was just watching his scene, and it just seemed like he didn't give a crap about anybody. That's what it seemed like. Look, I'm probably wrong. I actually am a big fan of his father, who's, I think, since his rest in peace, but Sterling Spencer, right? Or Yancey. Yancey Spencer. Isn't Yancey his father?
Yeah, Yancey. And they talk a little bit about Yancey and the legacy of their family in Pensacola Beach on the Gulf Coast of Florida.
Yeah, they're all-stars. They're full-on legends, man.
Totally.
And so I would like to read this, and I would love to give him a second chance. I mean, I'm sure he's a nice guy. It sounds like he's a wonderful guy. Everyone makes mistakes. Lord knows I've made about 1 million.
Yeah, I mean,
wonderful. And I've acted like a jerk 1 million times. So who am I to say? Who am I to be a hypocrite on this?
Wonderful or not, because I don't know. I don't have any personal experience with him. He's an interesting character. You know what I mean? Like, the fact that he has those blemishes and scars and all of that just make him a lot more interesting.
Yeah.
For the purpose of surf media, for this Surfers Journal article, for us doing podcasts, he's an interesting character.
That type of content that is like it's almost hate-driven content.
You think?
Well, what is behind that kind of content?
Comedy.
Like Lewis Samuels used to do that, right? And he would just basically kind of like tear people down.
See, I see it completely differently. I don't see any hatred or malice in it at all. I see comedy.
Why would Jeremy Flores choke him out?
That's on Jeremy. I mean,
Right, but I mean,
clearly Jeremy took it
it wasn't
seriously.
like yeah, it
No, but
wasn't like
do you remember the piece that he did about
nah.
Jeremy that Jeremy was
I
so
don't
pissed about?
I don't follow any of it.
Okay, so it was a video piece where Jeremy was you had to have seen this. Jeremy was walking up the beach after a heat at J Bay, and a little kid went up to go get his autograph, to get Jeremy's autograph, and Jeremy didn't have a pen, and the little kid didn't have a pen. So Jeremy just like shoos him away, probably saying like, "Oh, go get a pen and I'll do it for you." But Sterling did a voiceover, basically in Jeremy's voice, like, "Oh, you know, little kid, I'm a professional surfer. Shoo, shoo, go away. I have no time for you." Pretending like Jeremy was being pretentious and sending the kid away. So
Yeah,
it was harmless.
I don't think
Nobody,
it was
no,
harmless.
listen, hear me out. Nobody watching that video thought that that was Jeremy's voice, nor that Jeremy was actually saying that to the kid. It was completely innocuous. It was strictly for laughs, and it was hilarious. There's no victim in that crime. Jeremy is an
Jeremy's the victim.
no, Jeremy's an idiot for ever getting upset. That video probably got more views than any heat that Jeremy surfed in that year, and he could easily have leveraged it to heighten his profile. The fact that he was sensitive enough to get upset about this joke makes Jeremy look like a dick and a douche, which, by the way, he's been accused of in the past, you know, for choking people out, both Sterling and somebody in the water just previous to that at the Gold Coast event. So I have no problem. I don't think there was any malice with Sterling's. I mean, there is a fine line with comedy. You can certainly do it spitefully and actually like disparage somebody's character. Nothing that I ever saw Sterling do was that way. It was always victimless. Just it's satire. And if you can't laugh at satire, then you've got no sense of humor.
Okay.
No response?
I mean, what do you want me to say?
I want to say, I want you to acknowledge surfers are taking themselves way too seriously. Lewis Samuel's stuff, by the way, was more critical. So I could see people taking umbrage with Lewis because he was actually kind of picking apart their actual weaknesses. And I don't think it was vindictive or mean-spirited, but it was actually critical. And I understand people getting upset about critique, but I do think pro surfers take themselves way too seriously. And it's high time that there's actually critical assessment. Like, dude, I am so bored by reverent, glowing write-ups of surfers. I have no time or interest in hearing how great Kelly Slater is anymore, you know? Like Lewis, whatever Lewis is going to write about Kelly is going to be more interesting because it's at least going to be critical.
Why was Kelly pissed off at Sterling Spencer?
I don't remember.
But Kelly was after him for something? He wanted to have a confrontation with him?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And I don't even remember
So we
ever
got two cases now where something Sterling did or wrote or created made two different people feel like they had to go confront this guy.
way more than two. Like that's
And
part of
you don't think that's wrong?
I think Kelly Slater and Jeremy Flores are way too sensitive. They've never had anybody poke inquiry into them. All they've ever had from surf media.
Kelly Slater gets terrorized all the time. All you got to do is go online, go on his Instagram, and there's a million people giving Kelly Slater shit.
That didn't exist in 2005. In 2005, it was all surf magazines that venerated all of them and blew, wind up their skirts. They've never had anybody, any version of surf media that ever gave them a hard time or even criticized them.
I mean, is that what we're supposed to do? We're supposed to give people hard times?
No, but I think
why we're here.
First of all,
give people a hard time.
No, but you should be able to take. You should be able to take critique. First of all, if you're a professional surfer and your job is to be judged,
critique is one thing.
Okay, so Lewis Samuels falls in critique, and Sterling Spencer's falls on satire, and both of those are fully valid.
All right.
No.
I mean, if that's what they want to do, I'm not going to say don't do it. I just think I think there's probably better ways that could spend their energy.
I disagree because two of those people are the most, certainly Lewis was among the more kind of important surf contributors of his era.
I would agree that he sort of kickstarted the whole, what he did was powerful. There's no doubt. And I think what Sterling did was powerful. I'm just not sure it's the best use of their power. That's all I'm saying. But it's none of my business.
If you're going to interview somebody for the podcast, for the boardroom, is your intention only to blow favor their way?
No, I'm not going to blow favor anyone's way.
Yeah. So there's value in being critical and making them kind of,
I agree. It's just like how you go about sort of manifesting that criticism, and how you frame that criticism, the tone that you put on that criticism. You can criticize people with respect, or you can criticize people disrespectfully.
Well, again, Sterling Spencer wasn't even a critique. He wasn't a critic. He was a satirist.
I mean, who's to say he's a satirist?
How would you define it?
I don't know. I don't know, but I just feel like the cloaking something under the umbrella of, but he's a satirist, so it's okay. It's kind of a cop out. Like, you better be a pretty good satirist.
That's not a cloak. That's a definition of what he's doing. Like, it's not like he's out there with a vindictive intent and I'm calling it satire. It's best defined as satire.
All right. Well, I haven't seen enough of it. I haven't seen enough of it to go further. I guess my overarching thing is, it would be nice if people were nicer.
I'm okay with that. I'm fine with being nicer, but I also am okay with satire, and then also calling a spade a spade. Like, there's tremendous hypocrisies to Kelly Slater's, varied business interests versus what he, says that he's into in terms of environmentalism and that sort of stuff. And it's okay to call him out on those things. And I would love to hear Kelly defend those things. But traditionally, surf media, and certainly magazine surf media, for all the years that I was growing up, wouldn't even touch a toe in that water.
Yeah, but you and I both know that's what magazines are for. They're marketing vehicles for the surf industry.
That's not what that's what surf magazines have done, but that's not what magazines are for.
Now, surf magazines all they are is marketing vehicles for the surf industry.
Well, that's why they probably don't exist anymore too.
Well, that might be, but if you think that surf magazines were created so that we could put a microscope on the culture and call it out, and then what you need is a subscription-based surf magazine like the Surfer's Journal, because there's no ad revenue based surf magazine that's going to shoot itself in the foot. I lived in this world for 10 years. I worked at Surfer Magazine for 10 years. I was the guy that was like, that was a shitty surf movie, let's call them out. And I was the guy that would have the publisher in my office going, dude, you can't do that. They spend fucking $150,000 a year on ad buys. So, if you're not going to say anything nice, don't say anything at all.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's clear that model was broken, and that's why it doesn't exist anymore. But there are successful magazines in every other space that incorporate critique.
Who? Give me one.
Any magazine. I mean, the New Yorker has film criticism in every issue, restaurant critique. They critique politicians.
Yeah, but I mean, like an enthusiast-based, say, I don't know, Hot Rod magazine.
I have no idea.
Enthusiast-based magazines, not general reading, because general reading you can get away with calling shit on them because they're not advertisers. But when you've got an enthusiast-based marketing platform like a surf magazine or a hot rod magazine or golf magazine, you're not going to put a bad review about one of your advertisers in it. You're just not going, or your advertisers' pros.
Well, it's high time that they did. I mean, look, this is exactly
they're not gonna, David. If they do, their money.
This is
look,
exactly this. I understand the point that you're making, but what
I
I'm
agree with
saying
you
is,
that it's, look, I agree with you. There should be criticism. I'm not saying don't. I'm just saying if you think it's going to come from surf magazines ever, then you don't
I,
understand what surf magazines are.
that
They're
was
marketing
never
vehicles for the surf industry.
that was never the point that I made. That was never the point that I made, that surf magazines should be the ones doing it. I don't know where you even came up with that point. I'm saying that
You haven't been listening. You haven't been listening to yourself.
I'm saying that there's so much value in calling Kelly Slater out on the hypocrisies that he's clearly displaying. And if the magazines
Right, but
aren't
it's
willing to
not going
do
to
it,
happen from a surf magazine.
nobody
It's not
even
that they're
said
not
that.
willing to do it.
Scott,
It's
nobody
not that
even
they're
said
not,
that.
You just said it. You just said
You
the
keep
magazines aren't
bringing it
going to
back to these defunct magazines. What I said was that when Sterling Spencer comes along, and he wasn't actually doing this, but when somebody like Sterling comes along and highlights the hypocrisy, there's tremendous value in it. And you
I
said,
agree.
no, you were like, oh, they should
I
put their
agree with
time
you.
into something else. And I'm like, no. There's tremendous value in truth and seeing the truth. And it's
Right,
okay if
but
the magazines aren't going to publish it. We'll talk about it. Sterling could
right.
talk
No,
about it in his career.
I'm all about honesty and truth. It doesn't mean that it's necessarily my place right now to call out somebody that I know did something wrong just because I have a vehicle to do it. It might not be. Who says it's who gives me the authority to do that? Just because I'm happen to see it happen?
By the way,
yeah,
I hate to even dive in to this that you pulled me into about magazines, but one shining example is when Chaz wrote that piece about Mick Fanning calling him a Jew in Stab magazine. They Rip Curl pulled $250,000 or threatened to pull $250,000 worth of advertising from Stab magazine annual advertising budget. And Derek Riley, who was co-owner of Stab at the time, said, take your money and walk. This happened. Stab or Chaz reported the truth of what happened. We are not going to redact that. And Rip Curl pulled their money, and other advertisers pulled their money too, and Stab continued to flourish despite those advertising dollars. And Zach Weisberg from the Inertia spun out and created the Inertia because of that as well. He left Surfer Magazine, as you know, because you worked with him, you were mentoring him at the time, and then he left to start the Inertia because of that exact incident. So not only has that happened, tremendous growth and expansion in the industry has happened because of it.
Well, I'm glad we've clarified that I'm right and you're wrong. This has been
check
helpful.
your facts, Mr. Bass.
What do you mean? I agree with everything you just said there. What are you talking about? I'm just telling you that overall, generally speaking, enthusiast-based magazines are not going to shoot themselves in the revenue foot by saying stuff that maybe should be said somewhere. It's just not the vehicle to do it. Maybe we do need the Sterling Spencers or the Derek Riley Stab example to be the one that perhaps sheds light on a situation that needs light shed on it. It's simply never going to happen from the standard surf magazine vehicle because it's bad business.
It's no business now.
Wow.
There's no such thing.
I guarantee you that on surfermagazine.com, they're probably doing their best to keep the ad revenue model alive and well.
Good for them. Let's move on.
Is that your segue? Jeez.
Yeah, let's move on.
Wow, you're pissed, huh?
No, not at all.
I'm just kidding. Nobody cares.
I've got various things related to surf contests, but what do you got?
Well, I've got great news. See how I bring good stuff? I'm bringing good news. I'm not bringing like negative satire. Good news.
Can't wait for your positivity.
Okay, good. Yeah. Indonesia announced they're going to into their third phase, and they're accepting foreign tourists starting September 11th. So if you've been chomping at the bit to go surf in Indonesia, beginning September 11th, they're opening up. There's a few protocols you're going to have to go through. You're going to have to provide, some testing, proof that you're negative on the COVID. But opening up Indonesia to traveling surfers September 11th. That is great news. I'm bringing Glad tidings.
Are they opening to everybody from around the world? They can't be opening to Americans.
It says here, each tourist needs to obtain a negative swab test to enter Indonesia. You can get one of these from any of your medical clinics within your country. This test is valid for 14 days. The only place you can fly into is Bali. Bali is going to be the central location for international travelers. Once you enter Bali, you need to obtain another rapid test to travel domestically within Indonesia. And that rapid test can be obtained in the airport, and the test results will be emailed to you within 30 minutes. It doesn't say anything about not allowing Americans, but you're right. It wouldn't surprise me if, America's not on their list of allowed countries, seeing as how we've done such a great job of corralling this pandemic relative to all the other countries in the world.
So I have two thoughts.
Yes.
The first is their economy is heavily dependent upon tourism. So I'm wondering if they're expediting this to help their economy recover. And then secondly, do you trust Bali to be on the leading edge of this kind of scientific experiment?
The gnarly part is from Bali, you have to fly to Padang and spend the night in a motel where you can get on a boat to get out there. But yeah, you know what? I trust Bali. Why not?
You do?
Dude, I'm masked. I'm going to have a face mask, hand mask. I'm going in with like a full Breaking Bad suit. I'm going to wear the Breaking Bad suit until the boat pulls up in Padang. I'm going to jump on the boat in Padang. In the harbor, I'm going to take off the friggin' Breaking Bad toxic suit and revel in my glory of a surf trip in Indonesia.
Dude, you are going to be the most vulnerable population by virtue of the fact that you haven't exposed yourself to one microbe of any germ, period. You're going to come out of your
You have no idea.
Out of your hazmat suit, and the very first germ that's in the ocean that normally wouldn't even affect you is going to give you like pink eye or something.
I've been working on the hill in my backyard with 2 Guatemalan friends for 3 weeks, and believe me, they're not like super up on their COVID protection.
Are you hazmat suited and with them?
No, are you kidding? Hablas.
So I don't understand your policies.
Me either. I don't either.
Okay,
They're constantly changing. I'm floating with the wind. I'm floating with the breeze, man. If I knew what my policy were I'd print them and sell them. I'd publish them, man. I have no idea what my policies are.
Well, because when
I'm
you and
a mess, dude. I'm a mess. I'm telling you, I'm a mess.
When you and I recorded at Shack and you were wearing a mask, I was like, in my head, I was like, there's phases of whatever we're going through right now. And so the first phase was like full lockdown, only go to the grocery store, whatever. And then it's like I start seeing my family a little bit here and there. And so by the time you and I are recording, I'm like, I guess this is like the third kind of grouping of people in my life that I'm going to have some subtle exposure to en route to kind of a broader exposure, right? But you were wearing a mask and you're like, no, we're not supposed to have any exposure. And I'm like, oh shoot, maybe I'm not the third grouping for Scott, or maybe we define it differently. But if you're in your back working with the Guatemalan dudes with no protective covering at all, then I feel like they're closer to you in your inner sanctum than I am. After 7 years.
I go with God.
No,
I'm wearing a mask on the hill. But
are you really?
Yeah.
You're working in the heat all day with a mask.
Yeah.
Brutal.
Yeah. And I got to pull it down and be like, seguro, I got to, because talking
you have to shout at them.
Talking in Spanglish without a mask is hard enough, but with a mask on, talking in Spanglish is super hard.
Yeah.
By the way, have you ever had this thing where like when you go to like France, or you go to like Portugal, or you go to Japan, a great example, and they're speaking to you in a foreign language, and you're like, oh, my foreign language part of my brain needs to turn on, and I just start speaking in Spanish to people that are Japanese. Do you ever do this?
I totally do. I do it. I don't know if the words ever get out of my mouth, but I definitely, that's what my default is to go to Spanish for sure.
Yeah. Just immediately you're just like, gracias. They're like, what?
I always appreciate too when when somebody is speaking to a person in the person's second language, they'll just up the volume, you know?
Oh yeah.
Like
Oh, yeah.
I've worked in restaurants through high school and college, and it's like the owner of the restaurant who speaks English would go talk to a Hispanic employee and start shouting at them. It's like, they're not deaf.
That's me.
They
That is
just
me.
don't understand English so well, you know? All
Uh,
right. In regard to surf contests, hey, we had no surf contests for 6 months, and all of a sudden, we've got a plethora coming at us this week. There's Rumble at the Ranch, which is
do not care.
the WSL has introduced this new format. It's really just in lieu of everything else, in lieu of not having anything else to do. They basically have surfers who are in California currently, so they don't have to travel. They're inviting them up to Surf Ranch. They're going to have 8 teams, 2 surfers on each team, male and female surfer on each team. They're going to get 4 waves, 1 right and 1 left each. And the top right and left between the 2 surfers will be scored. And at the end of the day, there will be a winning team. What are your thoughts about this, Scott?
Don't care. Have no desire whatsoever to watch anything at the ranch. What's the word I'm looking for?
Regardless?
That involves competition. I'd rather just watch free surfing there. I'd rather watch, like, you know, wingnut with some chick on his shoulders trying to get in the tube together on a longboard or whatever. Like, I mean, dude, I've got Major League Baseball, I've got NBA, I've got the hockey, I've got playoff hockey. There's professional golf. There's 4 different sports I'd rather watch than a competition at the surf ranch. Now, I love the WSL and I love surfing competition, but not at the surf ranch. It's boring. It just doesn't excite me. There's no way you can spin it unless it involves, like, I don't know, like midgets or small people or something. And I don't know, with flames or something, like dwarf tossing in the tube. I don't know. Spice it up for me, you know?
This officially just became our most alienating podcast episode ever.
I'm trying to be woke. I'm trying to be PC. I don't know what the right term is. If somebody would, what's the right term for a small person?
See, I don't think the problem was you choosing the wrong term. I think it was objectifying that group of people by throwing them in the air. That was the problem there.
I'm just trying to spice up the competition. It can be a heavy person. It's just easier with a lighter person. That's all I'm saying.
Crystal clear.
You don't want any part of me right now. You're like, I want to make sure the listeners know that I am not privy. I'm not a part of. Just go ahead and separate yourself from me.
So you're saying exactly what we've been saying ever since we saw the Future Classic, where they did a specialty event there prior to them ever running a CT event there. We identified it immediately. I mean, it was clear as day to anybody who's ever watched any competitive surfing was this is way too monotonous for it to be interesting, and there's no way to manufacture a drama. And in the best case scenario, you have 2 surfers vying it out for a fraction of a score, but the canvas never changes. So the dramatics are actually completely dissolved, and it's now become this gymnastic display of who can do just a fraction of a something different than the other, and it's just not interesting at all. So the fact that
By the way, gymnastics with a midget and like fire would be pretty cool too.
Now that would add some drama. That would be adding back. That would be adding back all of the things that we miss that you just get naturally in the ocean. But the WSL doubled down on it by including this venue on the CT, which is an abomination, and then doubled down again by doing it 2 and 3 years in a row, scheduling it 2 and 3 years in a row, even though they haven't executed yet. I think that they're doing this strictly because they have no other options at this point. So I almost don't even blame them. Yeah. It's kind of like, well, I guess you could do nothing or something, but they're not going to get any views. Yeah. Whatever their projections are for viewership is going to be dismal. Secondly, I don't even know if I'm going to watch the highlights. Like, this is at the point where I don't care about Surf Ranch, even watching it in free surfs anymore. If a clip pops up in my feed, I'm not going to sit 45 seconds watching it. I know exactly what the
What
wave's
if the
going to do.
clip popped up in your feed and it
Oh,
was
here we go.
wingnut with like small people and they were juggling fire trying to get tubed? You would click on that, right?
I would absolutely watch it, but it is nowhere the same as surfing, quote surfing. That is now a novelty, exhibition. One note came in from a listener.
Look,
And this is actually, I hadn't even thought of this before, but I'd be curious to hear if you agree. He says, we've talked about how boring the wave is to watch. But quote, the wave just isn't for vertical surfing. The guys struggling on pointy thrusters to keep up their speed of the wave because there's no energy sucking off the bottom. In my opinion, the most beautiful examples of surfing on that thing have been by folks drawing progressive horizontal lines on boards that generate their own speed. The clips I'm thinking about were CJ Nelson and Pat Towersy, but there have been a lot of other examples of longboarders and riders of alternative craft putting on some fun clips out there. Maybe the pool is the most practical place for competition. Actually, I don't understand what that sentence means, but he said we can get our pal Devin Howard on the event and maybe consider style and board choice paramount over acrobatics, end quote. This is from Michael in New York. Would you more likely watch something like that?
I mean, maybe. Initially, I'm like, okay, maybe. I'm not excited by that, but he does bring up some good points, which you brought up in the past too, which everyone knows, is that we do have a palette here. We know what we're getting. It's we're painting with oils. Like we get it, right? So knowing that we have this sort of objective palette that everyone knows what it is, you could. I mean, it's a great opportunity to go, okay, we're going to throw a fish, a longboard, a glider, and a kneeboard into the bubble, and we're going to spin the wheel, and you're going to pull it out. And Kelly Slater, you get to ride the glider, the 11-foot skip fry glider. You get to ride that. And Stephanie Gilmore, you get to ride the Elia, and Jordy Smith, you get the Almeric Trifin. You know what I mean? And somehow or another, you could create some sort of competition around, because we do have the same
canvas
palette. Yeah, the canvas. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. That if it was just an exhibition of that, I'd more likely watch it for sure. Seeing Kelly try to figure out an Elia and a glider out there would be interesting.
Yeah, and I'm a fan, as are you, of the WSL. I'm a fan of pro surfing. I'm a fan of the Surf Ranch. I love the Surf Ranch. I go up there. I'm involved with some. I'm a fan. It's just I'm not going to watch pro surfing there because I got a lot more stuff to watch. Like, what you need to watch? Jim Gaffigan, The Pale Tourist, season 1, episode 1, where he goes to Canada. That's what you need to watch.
Where can I find it?
Amazon Prime.
The Pale Tourist.
Jim Gaffigan, Canada.
That's hilarious.
Season
That's a hilarious
1, episode
title.
1. Yeah, he's pretty funny. I'm a big fan of his.
Is it a travel show or a sitcom?
Do you know who Jim Gaffigan is?
Yeah.
Comedian. It's a stand-up.
Okay.
Stand-up show.
Okay. By the way, a listener sent me the forecast, a screenshot of the forecast for the Olympics on the week that they were supposed to run in Japan at Shitashita Beach. And by the looks of things, they absolutely dodged a bullet. The forecast was completely flat. It was lake-like. So that would have been a nightmare.
Yeah, that's interesting. In a weird way, Fernando's probably going, maybe this was all meant to be. And maybe I should see the writing on the wall and consider, do we have an option? Do we have a contingency here? Is there an American Wave Machines perhaps that's being built in Japan that we can use if in fact it goes flat? But anyway, we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, it was unsurfable. They would not have been able to run competition.
Right.
So,
it's like it has been here for 3.5 weeks.
Yeah, exactly. So the other surf contest related topic is Stab Magazine's Surf 100, which airs in 2 days from now, August 6th, Pacific Standard Time, 7 p.m. Are you familiar with this?
I am. I looked at it. I looked at the format. I got the email. I actually had it in my notes for last week's show, but
they changed the date. So it was supposed to air last week, and apparently they had some technical difficulties. So it got postponed until this week. But the basics are they've filmed a 100-minute session with Kaloe Andino, Griffin Colapinto, and Ian Crane surfing lowers in the midst of a crowd and just vying for waves like you would in a free surf session. It's basically a 100-minute free surf session, fully filmed and documented and commentated by Salema Masakela, Taylor Knox, and Dane Reynolds. And then they're going to make it all available pay-per-view, $10 to pay in advance, $15 if you pay the day of. And you as a viewer can watch it in real time, 100 minutes, and score each individual wave. In addition to the actual judging panel that they have, they'll tabulate all the scores and a winner will be selected. I guess a right and a left, 2 waves from each surfer will be attributed or contributed to their 20-point potential total score line. So it's cool in that it's interactive. Look, we as viewers get to score and have some sort of a say and influence in this. But what are your thoughts? Are you going to pay for it? Are you going to watch it? Do you care?
I don't know. No, my initial thought was, here's what I would like to see. If you're going to go to a surf spot, let the guys, like the unsung hero local guys, be involved in this. But when they said lowers and they're like, let's bring Dane down and it's like, you know what I'd like to see it, and this is kind of wacky, but I'd like to see like Joe Cremo in it, or Cordell, and I'm sure there's some other locals at lowers because I haven't surfed there in 20 years, but there's other guys that are unsung hero guys that have been surfing there. They're probably like Dawn Patrol guys that are on it every morning, or just, you know what I mean? Like, I'd like to see some of those guys thrown into the mix.
You would not pay $10
I'm not going to pay
to
for
watch any of those guys surf. And they did that. I mean, I feel like Ian Crane is their answer to what you just said.
I'll do Ian Crane, but how about like the Joe Cremos, like the guys that are just like kind of on the fringe, a couple of fringe guys. I'm just saying, throw in some fringe guys. Do we really need? We can watch Kaloe and all these other guys on the WSL. Like, let's throw in some local guys, red hot local guys, and a couple of B player local guys. I don't know.
I think
maybe I'm wrong. Just a thought.
No, you're right. And they did exactly what you're asking by giving Ian Crane. It's the local shredder who surfs it on every swell versus the locals who turned A-list pro, fighting it out in the crowds and in a free. It's basically a free surf.
Maybe
it's not how it was explained, but that's what it is.
They get a right and a left, and then they put the right and the left on. Like, they surf for, I think, 2 hours or an hour, and their filmer gets the best right and the best left. And then they put it up, and then you vote on the right and the left.
They're all out there for 100 minutes together with the film crew on the beach. They're all vying for waves with the crowd. So it's a real-time free surf is what it is.
Yeah, but the voting comes down. I thought the voting was they take a right and a left from the 100 minutes, the best right and the best left, and they put that, and that's what we vote on.
It's just like a regular surf contest where every wave gets scored, but in the end, your best 2 scores go towards your 20-point potential total. But the best 2 are a right and a left. Like, your best right and your best left go towards your 20-point total. So it's an interesting concept. I appreciate them doing it. I'm not paying the $10 for it, and I have a feeling even the highlight reel that we watch won't be as good as whatever Instagram clip came out of lowers this week from any of those guys. So
exactly. I think you nailed it. Exactly.
All right. Well, what do you got in terms of Duke, Kook, must-see moments, any of that stuff?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, let me say that the California Gold Surf Auction closes this Saturday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, roughly 10 a.m. Sunday, August 9th if you're in Australia. But here, Pacific Standard Time, Saturday, August 8th, 5 p.m., California Gold Surf Auction closes. And we've got crazy bid going on 60 lots, historical, culturally significant surfboards and ephemera. And you're going to want to get involved in that. And I know that our friend Dave Proden from the WSL is involved in the bidding.
No way.
A lot of other people are. So there's going to be an exciting time here, Saturday night, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Log on and watch it all go down. Become a part of it. Register, bid, win. It'll be fun.
Can you say what board Dave's bidding on?
No, I'd rather not say it for Dave's sake. I don't want to.
Can I guess?
We need to have some integrity here.
Can I guess?
Auction integrity. Yeah, go ahead, guess.
Is it Tom Curran?
Am I supposed to reply to your guess?
Okay,
Because
I would
that
guess,
would be a tell.
I would guess. Yeah, I was just hoping you would get baited into it. I would guess it's Tom Curran's board, and my second guess will be, if not Tom's, something from Channel Islands for sure. But all right, we'll see.
Anyway, California Gold Surf Auction closes this Saturday, 5 p.m. August 8th. Get involved. I do have a great must-see moment, and I bet a lot of times you and I line up here.
It's the same for sure. It's the same.
Okay, my must-see moment is Mason Ho's video tribute to his uncle Derek, which I just watched about 20 minutes before coming on the air here with you, and it was awesome in a bunch of different ways. It was heartfelt. It tugged at my, my sympathies for the Ho family. It really brought out the best in Derek Ho. It was fun. It was sweet. It had Mason Ho's kind of fingerprints dripping all over it. It was high action, and I just thought it was really powerful. Probably the best thing I've ever seen on Derek Ho in 40 years. It was just awesome, and I hope everyone watches it. And
yeah, it is mine as well, and I agree with everything that you said. Furthermore, so much of the footage that we've seen of Derek Ho was just kind of recycled footage from his heyday over and over again, which is great. And it's iconic and all that sort of stuff. This was all footage from the past 5 years. So the past 5 years that Mason Ho has been doing his blog with Royden Pringle behind the camera and doing the editing, he's been, occasionally filming with Derek. So they went through that 5-year archive and put together, I think it's about a 16-minute tribute video, which is not only surfing, but it's a lot of B-roll stuff. So you get a real feel for Derek and his personality and not just his surfing, which he was still surfing at the highest level up until his untimely death 3 weeks ago. So we will definitely put that up on spitpodcast.com.
The song is incredible. I think it's one song all the way through, and I don't know who it is. It might be Edgar Winter or Johnny Winter, or it's like Dwayne Allman and Eric Clapton, some like outtake from some Bela sessions or something. But it's just this incredible rock and roll song that goes for 13 minutes. It's a pretty cool jam.
I'm trying to look it up right now. They don't have the music credit in the notes on YouTube, but yeah, they use a lot of times they use a lot of Jimi Hendrix, and they will take
it had a Hendrix vibe to it for sure.
Yeah.
It could have been Hendrix.
And they will use like bootleg tapes or outtakes, live versions of stuff lots of times that just kind of meander, and they're like jam band kind of sessions. But yeah, we'll post that. And then my Duke, this could also be a must-see moment, but I'm going to just call it my Duke, Idolo Ferreira. He's been posting a bunch of free surf clips, both on Instagram and on YouTube. Dude, the recent clip, I think it just came out yesterday, of him surfing at his local break is beyond comprehension. Like, it is beyond comprehension. It is so gnarly. I can't even put it into words. Just the amount of whip and torque that he gets out of his turns, that you think they're just like throwaway turns, and he lands in a bottom turn and he goes straight into another one. They're just so gnarly. His level of surfing is insane.
Yeah, I saw this, and I think Stab or Beach Crit or somebody basically said What Elo is doing isn't even, we can't even relate to it. Like we're not even sure it's surfing. Like more of it is up here. And he's closer to gymnastics than he is to surfing. It's pretty mind blowing what he's doing.
But it's radical.
By the way, I feel like
it's not all above the
it's
lip.
all connected.
It's all connected. It's all power based. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's all really, it's not like he's doing some crazy thing and that's all he's doing. He's putting together through fluidity. It's mind blowing what he's doing.
It's incomprehensible and there's no fault in it. So the guy's
not yet.
The guy's a Duke. My kook is Southern California Edison for dumping tens of thousands of gallons of radiated water into the Pacific just a mile off the beach at San Onofre. They're required to give 48 hours notice before such dumps. So on July 22nd, they informed the public that they'd be releasing 21,168 gallons of water contaminated with radioactive waste and other toxic chemicals into the Pacific. Then again, 5 days ago, they announced that they'd be dumping another 18,900 gallons of water. They claim, I guess the science bears out that the dilution rate is such that it creates zero threat. These are legal levels of radiated water that they're dumping. They have nowhere else to dump it, obviously. But I would suggest that everybody exercise extreme caution. I am not a scientist. I am no doctor. I would just say this is the kind of stuff that comes out 20 years later that everybody who lived near Chernobyl has cancer. And not even Chernobyl. I mean, Chernobyl was a disaster, but people who live under, power lines or whatever end up with some weird ailment later in life that is way too late. So we have a bunch of information here. I would say exercise extreme caution. What are your thoughts?
I would agree with you. I would suggest exercising extreme. I like that.
I
feel like I need to apologize to Sterling Spencer, to dwarfs, to midgets, to Brazilians. I feel like there needs to be at the end of every show, there needs to be a moment where I just kind of blanket apology. I'm naive. I'm ignorant. I'll try to figure it out. I'm a work in progress.
I think that's what people enjoy about you is your candor. By the way, a listener messaged me on Instagram about the San Onofre thing. And he said, because there's signs on the beach warning, not preventing people from going in the ocean, but just warning them about the dumps. And he said, those signs about San Onofre dumping radioactivity water into the Pacific are way too late. The plant has been dumping at, quote, legal levels since day one. I worked as an operator at the plant while it was operating and did the draining of that water regularly. It's way below the, quote, legal level and barely, if at all, contaminated. While any radioactive exposure should be avoided, most people get more exposure from dental x-rays than working a day at the power plant. That's not to say that nuclear power is a good thing. It's horrible just because of the spent fuel. It's going to be thousands of years before any of the fuel from any nuclear facility would have decayed to be safe levels. And the US government, who is fully responsible for the spent fuel, has literally nowhere to put it. And that's why it's stuck on the beach at San Onofre, end quote. So that's a pretty scary assessment of the situation, but it is what it is. And it's what we do to power our homes and cities.
What's trippy about it is that it's so political. So there was this place, I think it's in New Mexico, where they were supposed to put it. It's a depository. It's a mountain that they bought that they're supposed to put the stuff on a railroad, on a train, ship it from San Onofre to this place and store it there. And it's going to be the shithole inside of a mountain that's got nuclear spent fuel. But the politics of it are such that nobody wants that train going through their neighborhoods, through their state, through their region, through their county. And so you've got a million different politicians going, oh, I can't have this. I can't have this. Even to the point that where it's supposed to go, and I think it's in New Mexico or wherever it is, the people there are like, no more. We don't want it anymore. Oh my God, I can't believe this is happening.
Right.
And the politicians, the senators are involved in that region are like, hey, what's going on? So everyone's pointing fingers at everyone else. And on top of all of that, if you were to really try to get into the solution, you're looking at probably a 75-year process, which means there's no politician that has maybe 6 or 8 years, maybe 10 years, let's say 20 years in office. There's no upside to trying to solve that problem if you're a politician besides just helping humanity. So no politician is going to touch it. It's like the ugly nuclear scar on the side of your neck that's just never going away and no one wants to look at it.
Yeah. Well, I'm sad. I mean, we basically need renewable, sustainable energy sources and to get away from this sort of a thing, because you're absolutely right. We've all benefited from it, but it's high time that we kind of start steering away from this sort of a thing. It's crazy.
I mean, I would suggest like windmill farms, except the noise from that causes cancer.
The noise does?
Yeah. Didn't you hear?
No.
That's what our president said.
Hey, he could be right about all of this stuff. Maybe Antifa is training 75-year-olds to fall down on command and crack their head open. You never know. These tweets could all be correct.
Dude, I've been anti-fascist since the day I was born. My grandfather fought against Hitler. Anyway, we better shut up now before we piss off some people.
Well, we should. I don't know. If we haven't offended our sponsors, we should let people know. I don't know that everybody knows this, but Need Essentials, we always talk about wetsuits and outerwear for the mountain. They also have accessories like fins, surf fins, leashes, fins, kind of everything. But the fins are what I want to clue people into, because surfboard fins are expensive. Need Essentials maintains the same business practice that they do by cutting out the middleman, cutting out the branding, cutting out the hang tags, all the accoutrement that adds expense to your products. So you can get keel fins, twin fins, thrusters, 8-inch traditional kind of upright single fin. They've got a raked single fin, various sizes, and it's all way cheaper than you would normally buy your surf fins for. So Need Essentials, again, the brand name, it says all you need. Need and Essentials, surf fins, wetsuits, leashes, all of it, needessentials.com. And they've been sponsoring us, supporting us for years now. So go check them out.
They should have shampoo. You could get some, because you definitely need the essential.
Turns out you don't need that. That is a non-essential, and I haven't used it for 5 years. And anybody who's watching the YouTube version of our video can't argue with what's happening here.
Oh God, you win.
Right? Voluminous, lush.
Oh Lordy. Okay, well, that's it, I guess, right? Until next time. I feel like this show is we're gonna get a lot of spit coming back at us, particularly me.
Scott, in this modern era, that is all you want. Engagement is key. Yeah. Engagement is all that matters. You want clicks? You want Instagram followers?
No, I just want to have a good conversation. Okay, look, until next time, adios and aloha.
Oh my gosh, dude.